Okay. Well, hey everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022 and the first edition of Origin Community Call. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great year, although, we had a great Q4 for OUSD, but I'm even more excited about things to come. So on today, we have a fairly typical agenda, I think. We'll get a liquidity mining update from Josh. I will go through the governance proposals, several of which have recently passed, and then we have our regularly scheduled one that starts later today. Then we should go through some sprint planning quickly because we have a new sprint starting this week. There are some reward token harvest improvements that Daniel will tell us about, and then I think some others maybe as a part of sprint planning that we'll get into for the near future. Then I had a question or two, Josh, about how the OUSD docs translation works, and then wanted to give a quick update on the video content that we talked last week about putting together. So that's what I had on the agenda thus far. Of course, you can find that agenda. I will link it at originprotocol.com/discord in the Origin Dollar discussion channel. You can follow along there or check it if you're watching later on YouTube. But please join us in the future. And if there isn't anything else to include in the agenda right now, we can start with any announcements or anything to note or flag that comes to mind.
I'm super excited that we're finally where we should be on DeFi Pulse. It took us forever to get that fixed, but thanks for pushing through on that. It's great to have Origin Dollar receiving that recognition and I guess 30th place right now, and looking for the list. But Cream is still in spot 18, so I guess we're technically at spot 29 in the rankings here. So still a long way to go, but great to see that we're already in the top 30.
Any other announcements or anything to flag that comes to mind for anyone else?
Similarly, we are now automatically selling CRV tip rewards tokens, and we sold our backlog and put that towards yield.
Wonderful. As an avid OUSD user, I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Josh, do you want to give us a quick update on the status of liquidity mining campaign?
Yes, so a couple of you have been following along on Convex. They had their first big unlock, as in the people who, the very first people to ever lock up on Convex were unlocked. And a lot of people were anticipating there would be a buying opportunity as people were taking profits. Those initial users were up 4x on their money. And so we took the opportunity to buy the dip. We've now increased our position. We now have 217,000 Convex and about $10.2 million worth for being held by the Origin Treasury, and we're going to be using that to vote for OUSD pool. And so while that's not enough on its own to match the liquidity rewards we're offering, it certainly helps to be able to have some more rewards that we don't have to pay for on an ongoing basis. Of course, we didn't deploy any rewards to liquidity mining this past week since we've shifted everything to Convex, and their voting happens bi-weekly instead of weekly. Going forward, I think we're going to have to figure out what we can do to stay competitive here. Frac spent $7.5 million this last round on bribes. Magic Internet Money spent $4.14 million. honestly, we're not, it's going to be really hard for us to compete, particularly with the protocols that are owning their own liquidity. It gives them quite an unfair advantage. And so it makes the ideas that Daniel was floating around about us owning our own liquidity and participating in our own pool that much more interesting for us to really dig into and understand the dynamics here, because Frax and MIM own such a large percentage of their own pools. So for every dollar they spend on bribes, they can just collect it on the other side. And so if we can figure out how to do that for OUSD, then that would make it a lot easier for us to increase our spending on that front. Sort of how it's trending, like $1 million would have bought you 14% of a vote in round 7, and that's down to only 5% of the vote in round 8. So it's getting quite competitive out there. The ROI, as far as the number of CRV and CVX rewards you get, is still positive. As far as assuming you are in the pool and able to collect it on the other side, the ROI is still there. But obviously, Origin is not. We're not making up a large percentage of our own liquidity in that pool, so that doesn't really apply to us. So yeah, that's kind of where we are on liquidity mining. Of course, we'll be. We'll have to figure out exactly what we're going to do this week, but planning to participate in convex bribing again. Back to you, or if there's any questions or ideas.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do we have 1 week remaining on the 10-week campaign? Or is it 2?
It's 2, because we didn't do any last week, so we're kind of spreading it out a little bit.
Any thoughts yet on what might happen after that?
Yeah, that's something we're thinking about and debating internally. And then obviously we'll be bringing that to the community as well as we come up with a firmer proposal.
Cool. Anyone else have questions about the current liquidity mining campaign? Okay. Let's run through each of the current governance proposals, if you don't mind taking a few minutes to do that. There were 3 that were passed. First was our regularly scheduled strategy allocation that was executed over the weekend, and I feel obligated to ask all the time, Daniel, the process is still working there. Do you have, is there like a target date each week, target day of the week to execute those, the reallocation?
I got caught up in getting the CRVX sold over the weekend and did not actually run it until I submitted them in to be run this morning. So that would not be my target thing. My target thing, I guess, would be within 48 hours after the voting closed. We're going to be executing them right after the meeting today. I think there's still room to make the tooling easier. It's gotten way easier, but since this is going to be something that's going to be happening 52 times a year if we keep this current setup, then it'll be worth making the tooling better. So I hope to have, once we have our fires out and all our yield coming in reliably, then I hope to make the tooling better still on this.
Okay, let us know if we need to budget some time to do that along the way. One of the other proposals that was passed was harvesting reward tokens through SushiSwap instead of Uniswap. I think I saw that one get executed also. Are we using it now, Daniel?
Yes, that proposal went through, and we used it to sell the CRV that was sold this weekend.
Cool. Thanks for doing that. And then we have not yet manually sold the CVX that was approved last week, right?
Correct. We've collected that from Convex and moved it to the Strategist wallet, and we are planning on actually doing the sale after or this afternoon, and then we're planning on dropping. I think the current plan is to put 50K in per day for the next 4 days into OUSD from that. Or, approximately. Depends on how much it comes out to. That's like a plus or minus 10K number because I don't actually remember the amount.
Okay. Anybody have questions about any of those proposals from last week? The only one that I'm aware of, and of course you can see all of these at vote.originprotocol.com, but the only one that I'm aware of that will be open very soon is this week's strategy allocation. And we included the spreadsheet that Josh had put together last week to help people figure out how they wanted to vote based on yields that are currently being owned across the strategies. Any other governance topics or proposals that I missed? Okay, let's talk about sprint planning. We have 2-week sprints. We're wrapping one up in the next couple of days, and then a new one will start on Thursday. So I think we mostly have projects carrying over from the past 2 weeks. One of the big ones is decentralized on-chain governance. Of course, Tom was going to do the front end for that. He's currently out on vacation. And so, Daniel, when do you think you might turn your attention to the contract portion of that, or do you have what you need to be able to run with that?
So I was going to want to check with Tom and see if he wanted to actually do the contract side as well, since he's already going to be deeply familiar on the UI side, and I think he was getting close to the end of the UI side. It kind of comes down to his preferences and what he feels like working on. But he could do this contract side, and I could stay on the yield side for right now.
Okay. Do you want to check in with him this week? And
Yeah,
I know he's out.
Back. Isn't he back shortly?
He's out until the 14th.
Oh, okay. Then never mind. Then yeah. So when he gets back, I'll check with him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'd be good to know if it's something you should start on in a couple of days. So I think he's got a good connection. You might just reach out to him and see what his plan is.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Then, Doman, you're wrapping up the general solution for strategies to sell multiple tokens. So the goal would be to launch that. How soon do you think that might happen?
Actually, I was going to jump in and say we might want to actually combine this with moving the harvest logic out of the vault contract, since it's all the same code basically. And that avoids messing with the vault twice. But basically adding stuff into the vault only to take it out immediately.
Did you want to do that, Daniel, or do you want me? I can also take that on, moving the logic out.
Yeah, maybe we can get together this afternoon and talk about it and see. But yeah, I think it would be you just learned how all the fund selling stuff works, so you'd be in a great place to actually write it into the new contract.
I think so too. Yeah. Micah, to answer your question, yeah, the one thing left is testing on the fork of a mainnet. If everything works as expected, other than that, we're in good place. And the one other limitation is we're waiting for Chainlink to add the CVX Oracle. From what I remember, everything is in place. They just need to deploy it. So that's one limitation that's outside of our control.
And Doman, since this is the end of your working day, if you wanted, you could do that Chainlink, the fork testing tomorrow, because that's really valuable to learn how to do that. And then we can meet tomorrow once we're both up.
Yeah, that worked better for me. Yeah, thanks. I'll propose a date. We can.
Sounds good. Yep.
Talk offline.
So just to clarify, so are we going to launch the current PR, the current changes that Domain has, or are we saying that we want to refactor before we do the deployment?
I would
the
think.
suggestion was that we refactor.
Yeah, I think we do that because we aren't actually going to be able to sell the CVX anyway at the moment. So we won't actually be gaining anything by launching it earlier.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
The other sprint priority that was potentially on the table is the decentralized harvesting and rebasing that we talked a little bit about last week, providing some incentives for other people in the community to trigger those transactions, as opposed to us doing it through Chainlink keepers. I think, Daniel, I saw that you might have wanted to have like architecture proposal for doing that. Is that where you think we would start there?
Yeah, so I think this actually falls under the same thing as what Doman was just talking about. It's basically the same thing of pulling the logic out, and then as part of pulling that logic out in a new way, it then gives the 1%. So I think it'll be the same PR that does both of these two things. I went through and wrote up like 2 pages of my initial thoughts, and then have been thinking on it a little bit more and realize better ways I can do things. So I'll go over that with Doman, and then we'll get a document written out of what we're thinking about that people can take a look at.
Okay.
Before starting on the code, but those two should come into the same PR.
Cool. Are there any other projects that you think we could potentially tackle in the next 2 weeks? Daniel, Josh, Frank, Doman?
We have limited engineering, so I think like the projects that we outlined may make sense.
Yeah, I think that's the main ones. Go ahead, Doman.
Yeah, sorry. Just at one point, I also wanted to do the automatic deploy of the dep. When you just push a branch, but I think that's a lot lower priority considering all the other things we have on our plate right now.
Cool. Well, I'll put it on the list as something that we might consider next time around, or a stretch goal for this week. But I know that there's always other things that pop up, always improvements that we see along the way that we can make. So maybe we'll have a little bit of time to budget for those.
Speaking of getting organized, Micah, are you thinking that at some point we'll transition to using GitHub boards for OUSD? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought I'd check in with you later when we would go through pros and cons from the NFT project management that we've been working on. But yeah, I'm certainly in favor of doing everything in GitHub.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's chat, and I'd love to get the feedback from the team as well on the OUSD side. I'll send the NFT dashboard so that everyone can check it out.
Okay, cool. Yep, works for me. So Daniel, those are what we just talked through were some bigger improvements to the way harvesting works, but you were making some other improvements that are sort of, at least one of them is an interim change, and then the other one is will be good going forward. Do you want to talk through those real quick?
Yes, I just reworked reset our Chainlink keepers, and we should now have harvests happening 3 times a day. So this will be yield compounding 3 times a week. Sorry. So this should be yield compounding 3 times a week and make for smoother yield coming in. We'll see tonight if it actually runs or if anything else needs tweaking, but it's already gone through Chainlink's approval process. I worked through that with them, or let them know beforehand that so they would be ready to approve it right away, and they did. So I think that one's complete, other than just verifying that it actually works. I'll also need to update the analytics, which I'll do after this call, to follow the new keeper, and so it sends it to our Discord bot. In looking at our compound harvest, we can cut $1 million off of our cost to collect comp tokens. This takes the cost of collecting from everything down by about half, so we can basically run twice as many harvests for the same price.
You mean Gwei, right? Not dollars.
Yes. Did I say dollars?
So yeah,
Okay.
you said we'd save $1 million, which
Sorry.
is
Yes.
a lot of gas.
Right.
Ethereum's expensive, but not quite that expensive.
Not yet. So yes. Yeah, cuts $1 million gas off, halves the price overall of doing the whole harvest. So that's up for review, and once that's reviewed, then we can go live with that and cut our costs down.
Do we need to do anything funding-wise if we're moving to a whole new keeper, or does our existing funding move over?
Yeah, I was able to pull the existing funding out and then move it over to the new keeper. There was just like this 50 block time limit that I had to wait before submitting the new keeper, but it's in the new keeper now.
Great.
It looks like we have like 800 with a 100 threshold, and it costs us like 50 per harvest link. So we should be good for the next 2 weeks anyway, at least safely.
And Daniel, when you say 3 times a week, are those like regularly scheduled days and times?
Yes, I think I configured it to, we have a current one that happens in the night between Saturday and Sunday. The next one will happen 2 days after that, and then the next one will happen, 3 days after that, and then 2 days after that.
Cool. It'll be nice to watch those in the OUSD bot channel.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments about changes to harvesting? I had sort of a minor thing that I wanted to follow up on with our docs. We talked a few weeks ago about adding a disclaimer to the docs because like the registry page and maybe some other content gets out of date on the non-English versions. So I went in to add that disclaimer, and I wasn't quite sure exactly where we wanted it. So like, Josh, I think you set up the docs, and in the README it says to make the changes on Gitbook, specifically on the English version. But I wasn't sure if we would want this disclaimer on the English version. So I tried adding it to Spanish version as a sort of proof of concept. But then I don't think it produced like a PR or any, I don't know if you're able to review it. So anyway, I just wanted to talk through that for a minute and see how exactly you would want that to work if you have a preference.
I think the way we do it is in crowding. We would go to the page that has the page that we want to add the disclaimer to. We just add that. Even though that text doesn't exist in the English version, we would add it into the Spanish version, and that would generate a PR, and then we would accept that. I think that's how the flow would work.
So we would,
because you're right.
Okay, gotcha. So we would need each translator to add it into a certain text block or something.
If we want it in the language, yes.
Yeah.
If we want to do it quick and dirty and put an English warning on it, we can get that done faster. But ideally that's in each native language.
Sure. And were you thinking that disclaimer would live on the registry page, or should it live on like the very top of the first introductory page?
I think it should go on the pages that are most like it should go on the registry page, because that's, if you're looking at that in Spanish and you're copying addresses off it, it'd be nice to have a big warning there saying, hey, this is probably out of date.
Yep. Here's another question. I wouldn't expect those addresses to be translated. So if we're changing them on the English version, that should propagate through all of the localized versions, I would think.
Yeah, actually, you're right. It should be showing. Yeah, it's more like descriptive text, but it'll be off if we've updated it and it hasn't. Oh, but it'll, actually, if we don't have a translation, we show English, so it's probably just like poorly translated right now. I haven't actually looked at it to see the current state in Spanish.
Yeah, I think the reason we started down this road was because on the registry page we previously had strategy allocations there, and we weren't updating those. But anyway, all that to say that I think we might either want a general disclaimer at the top of the introductory page, or nothing at all here.
I just looked at it, like it's completely wrong. The English versions are not flowing through if we update the content. Now, it might just be that we need to like push some stuff through, like crowding, and then generate some PRs and then accept them.
Yeah.
But like this is completely off right now.
Okay. Well, I had asked Aaron to follow up with the translators and get them to revisit everything, and us to plan to merge in all the translations next week. By then, if not before then,
Okay.
Because there's quite a few that need to be merged in from before, and then there will be some catch up that will happen in the next few days. So let's do that and see what they look like. And maybe it's just a matter of making sure that we merge translations more often, or maybe there's an issue with the setup where the English stuff's not making it all the way through. I don't know, but I'll continue to look into it. The other thing that I wanted to mention there is when I was looking through the README, there are like a bunch of manual steps to doing the merging. And it looked like you had recommended that someday we write a script for that. Of course, seems like a relatively low priority thing that we would never get to. So maybe we put that on the list of like stretch goals for the sprint in case somebody gets some extra time, or if someone in the community wants to write a script for us, that might be nice.
Sure.
Okay. I'll do that, and I'll make sure that I at least understand the manual steps involved so I can help keep us up to date on that. All right. The last thing that I had on discussion topics was video content, little bite-sized videos that we would record for educational and marketing purposes. I think what we've decided there is that I will do a quick one, just the basic, like getting started. Here's how you go from zero to having OUSD in a wallet. I meant to get that done before this meeting, but I apologize, I did not get to it. So I promise I will do that this afternoon. And then Daniel, I think when you get some time, you wanted to put together a how it works conceptual video that will probably be more entertaining than mine, to say the least.
I don't know. You might be very entertaining, but you will have to reach a high bar. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, those are the two that we're going to get done in the next few days. If there are any others that you guys think are high priorities, or anything in particular that you think we should cover on those, speak now, I guess, or send a note within the next 30 minutes or something, because I really am going to start on mine very soon. All right, that is all that we had on the agenda for discussion topics. We have a little bit of time for introductions. If anyone has not said hello before, or if you have and you just want to add anything to the meeting today, you're welcome to unmute anytime and interrupt me. Similarly, if there are any topics that we didn't get to that anyone else thinks we should cover before we go, then feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I'm sorry, I joined a bit late for when Josh was just finishing with the liquidity mining check-in. I was thinking, should we do some sort of, prediction on, how much other projects are going to spend, and maybe not do our campaign in the like 10 subsequent weeks. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just thinking, have we thought about it? Trying to get the most, bang for our buck. That type of thing.
Yeah, the problem is there's no signs that it's going to reverse. Like every week, the budget increases, and so every week we set out is just it's only going to get more expensive next week. It's a little depressing looking at the charts. Before we said we'll look at it, we'll take the opportunity. Like if it's we'll spend more if it's less competitive, or spend less if it's competitive, but each week it just gets more and more competitive and more expensive. So I think we're going to have to, figure out our strategy around this.
And do we have any idea if other projects are probably also using their reserves for the source of their funds for the bribes?
Sure. Yeah.
What else?
It's pretty standard. It's projects are using their own governance tokens as their rewards.
Cool, thanks.
Any other topics before we go? I'll just add a quick reminder we talked about earlier. Be sure to vote on this week's strategy allocation at vote.originprotocol.com. That will open, in a few hours. I get confused about time zones. Anyway, I'll be there. Hope to see you there. And we'll see you here, same time, same place next week in Discord. So join us there if you have not. And with that, have a great New Year.
Have a good one.
Thanks all. Happy New Year, everyone.
Later.